Fading skies of forever. 3 years. That's how long they had been together. 3 years of shared dreams, inside jokes, Sunday coffees, and whispered promises under fading skies. They were engaged, not just in love, but planning a forever. And for a while, everything felt right. He looked at her like she was the beginning and the end. She looked at him like he was her safest place in the world. But beneath the surface of their perfect picture, shadows had begun to stir. He was charming, more than charming, really. He had a way of making her feel like she was the only person that mattered. When he looked at her, his eyes sparkled with genuine affection, or so she always told herself. But there was a flicker she missed, a flicker that didn't quite belong. She often caught herself wondering if she truly knew him, if she'd ever really known him at all. Still, she clung to the hope that their love was enough, that the dreams for forever were real. One evening, as they sat on their favorite park bench watching the sunset bleed into shades of violet and gold, he reached for her hand, his fingertips brushing softly against her palm. 3 years, he whispered, his tone almost distant, as if lost in thought. Can you believe it? She smiled, leaning into his shoulder. It feels like yesterday we met here, actually. He chuckled, but his eyes held an unreadable depth. Yeah, we've come a long way. She looked up at him, searching his face. Are you happy? He hesitated, then shrugged. Happy enough. Isn't that what matters? Her heart fluttered with a mix of hope and doubt. She wanted to believe in their future, in the promise they'd made. But sometimes, the way he looked at her, with a fleeting distant gaze, made her wonder if he was just pretending. As days turned into months, subtle cracks appeared. Small lies, late nights, ignored calls. The moments of tenderness grew tinged with something unspoken, something darker. One night, she found herself standing in their bedroom, staring at the ring on her finger, the one they had chosen together. And she wondered if this was really their forever, or just a beautiful illusion. He entered quietly, as he always did, and caught her off guard. Hey, he said softly, brushing a hand through his hair. You okay? Yeah, she replied, voice trembling. Just thinking. He moved closer, wrapping her in his arms. We've got this, right? Whatever comes. She looked up into his eyes, searching for sincerity, finding only a fleeting echo of the man she once knew. In that moment, she whispered, I love you. And he responded with a crooked smile, a smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. I love you, too. But love, like fading skies, can be beautiful, yet fragile. And sometimes, the brightest sunsets hide the coming night. As the stars began to prick the darkening sky, she wondered if their promises were enough to hold back the shadows. Or if, someday soon, she would have to face the truth, her forever might just be a lie. The house was silent now, the kind of silence that presses heavy on the chest, suffocating even. Rayan sat alone in the dim glow of his desk lamp, staring at the screen that once flickered with promises of a better life. But then, he got the job. The one he always wanted. The promotion, the title, the late meetings, the new circle of people, and with it, a slow, insidious change began to seep into his world. It started subtle. A missed call here, a delayed reply there. Rayan's phone buzzed onto the table, ignored. His eyes flicked back to the spreadsheet open on his laptop, the numbers blurring together. His fiancée, Leela, had been calling all evening, her messages piling up, each one more desperate than the last. But he didn't answer. Instead, he typed, and typed, trying to keep his mind on his work, on his achievement. When he finally looked at his phone, it was late, well past midnight. Leela's name glowed on the screen, but he hesitated. A part of him felt distant, almost ashamed. He pressed dismiss. The next morning, the routine grew colder. The house felt emptier. The good mornings and good nights disappeared like they were never real. Rayan's world had shrunk to the glow of his laptop, the clatter of keyboard strokes, and the fleeting moments between meetings, moments that he filled with work, ambition, success. One evening, Leela finally confronted him, her voice trembling with quiet frustration. Rayan, where are you? You've been so distant. Don't you care anymore? He looked up, the brightness of the screen reflecting in his eyes. Leela, I'm doing this for us. For our future. She shook her head, tears brimming. You say that, but I feel like I don't even know who you are anymore. He closed his laptop with a sigh, but the guilt was buried beneath his pride. He was chasing the dream, and somehow, the person he loved was slipping away with each passing day. Late into the nights, Rayan's focus became sharper on the new circle of people, the colleagues, the clients, the endless networking events. The social veneer grew thicker, more polished. His excuses became more elaborate, and his schedule more packed. The calls that once were warm and familiar became hurried, clipped, perfunctory. One night, Leela found herself staring at his phone, her fingers trembling as she pressed his name. The screen lit up with a new message from one of his colleagues. Great job today, Rayan. Looking forward to the dinner tomorrow. Her stomach clenched. Who are you becoming? She whispered to the empty room, feeling the weight of betrayal settle deep into her bones. Rayan, oblivious or perhaps willfully ignoring, was already lost in the illusion of success. The man who once promised her forever had become a shadow, distracted, distant, unreachable. And as dawn crept in, the house remained silent, the space between them growing wider with every passing day. The love that once burned brightly was now flickering in shadows, drowned in the glow of ambition, a betrayal hidden behind the veneer of achievement. The first light of dawn seeped quietly through the cracked curtains, casting a pale glow over the silent house. The air was thick with unspoken words, the kind that lodged somewhere deep in the chest, heavy and unrelenting. Outside, the world stirred, unaware of the quiet decay unfolding behind closed doors. Inside, the space between Lena and him stretched wider with each passing day, a chasm built brick by brick from betrayal and neglect. Once, their mornings had been a chorus of whispered promises and shared smiles. Now, those moments had vanished, replaced by cold silence and the distant hum of a life that no longer belonged to them. Lena sat at the edge of the bed, clutching her robe tightly, her eyes fixed on the doorway. She listened for the faint sound of footsteps, the familiar sound of him moving through the house. But all she heard was emptiness. Still, she whispered softly into the quiet, "Good morning." Her voice felt tiny, almost afraid to disturb the fragile peace. A few moments later, she heard the distant clatter of his keys. When he finally appeared, he was already dressed, his face pulled into a mask of distraction. He barely looked at her, his eyes darting away as if to avoid the truth lurking behind her gaze. "Good morning," she offered again, trying to fill the void. "Morning," he mumbled, voice flat, already retreating into the world of his phone and the promises of a busy day. The hours passed like slow-moving shadows. He returned late, hands trembling from exhaustion, but his words remained minimal, excuses flowing effortlessly. "I was caught up in work," or, "It's just a lot right now," as if those words could somehow mend what was breaking. Lena made herself small, convincing herself that, "He's tired." She told herself that, "He's under pressure, that'll pass." Because love, she believed, meant waiting. Believing that the man she loved, the man who had once looked at her like she was the only thing that mattered, would come back. But his absence was a ghost, haunting the corners of her mind, whispering of betrayal hidden beneath the veneer of achievement. The glow of his ambition had drowned out the warmth of their connection, a slow erosion that she refused to acknowledge until it was too late. One evening, she finally summoned the courage to confront him. Sitting across from each other in the dim glow of a neglected candle, she tried to find the words. "Are you happy?" she asked softly. He looked up, a flicker of annoyance crossing his face. "What do you mean?" "I mean, us. What's happening between us?" He hesitated, then shrugged. "I'm busy. That's all. You should understand." She reached out, her fingers trembling. "I do understand. But I also need to know if I still matter to you." He looked away, avoiding her eyes. "You're overthinking it, Lena. I'm doing this for us. For our future." But as she listened to his words, she felt the cold truth settle in her bones. Her love had become collateral damage in the pursuit of his ambitions. She made excuses for him, for herself, for the life they had built and now was slipping away. And yet, she stayed. She stayed because hope was all she had left. Because love, she thought, meant waiting, believing, and praying that someday, he would see her again, not as an obstacle or an afterthought, but as the woman who deserved more than shadows and silence. As dawn broke anew, the house remained silent. The glow of morning illuminated the cracks in their facade, and beneath it all, the quiet acknowledgement that their love was flickering, drowned in shadows, betrayed behind the veneer of achievement. And somewhere deep inside, Lena clung to her hope, quietly whispering, maybe tomorrow. Maybe he'll remember. But days turned into weeks. And weeks into silent months. Until even her birthday became just another day on his calendar. No flowers, no call, no apology. When she confronted him, he sighed like her pain was an inconvenience. He said, "You're overthinking. Don't make it a big deal." And she almost believed she was the problem. Almost. With a faint smile, she stepped out into the night, leaving behind the broken pieces of a love that never truly was. Maybe the story of Rayan was one of regret, of lost chances, and of a love that simply couldn't be. But Lena carried a new hope, one that shimmered brighter than the stars above, whispering that someday, she would find love worth fighting for. And as the city's lights twinkled in the distance, she realized that sometimes, the greatest act of love is knowing when to walk away. And it broke her, not because he didn't show up, but because she realized he hadn't been showing up for a long, long time. That night, Lena made a choice. She realized she was engaged. Not just to him, but to a version of him that no longer existed. She realized that loving someone shouldn't feel like begging to be seen. That waiting shouldn't feel like wilting. That night, Lena made a choice. Not because she stopped loving Rayan, but because she finally started loving herself. She sat alone in her dimly lit apartment, the shadows cast by a flickering street lamp dancing across the walls. Her reflection shimmered in the cracked mirror above the sink, tired eyes, a fractured smile, and a weight she'd been carrying for too long. It was as if her heart had been waiting to catch up with her mind, whispering truths she'd refused to admit before. She had been engaged, not just to Rayan, but to a version of him that no longer existed. The man who once promised the world, who once made her feel seen, had been replaced by someone distant, preoccupied, and painfully self-absorbed. She saw now that her love had become a silent plea, a desperate attempt to be noticed amid a sea of indifference. Lena's fingers curled around her mug of cold coffee as she recalled the nights she had waited, hoping for a sign, a word, a touch that never came. Waiting shouldn't feel like wilting, she thought bitterly. It shouldn't feel like shrinking into the shadows of his excuses, becoming smaller with each unanswered call and dismissive glance. She took a deep breath, voice trembling but firm. No more. Her heart fluttered with a strange mixture of fear and liberation. It was the kind of night that cracks open the soul, revealing what's been hidden in plain sight. Later, the phone buzzed on the table. She hesitated, her thumb hovering over the screen. "Are you going to answer?" A voice whispered in her mind. But instead of picking up, Lena reached across the table and turned it off, the click echoing loudly in the silence. She finally understood. Loving someone shouldn't feel like begging to be seen. It shouldn't mean waiting, hoping, or shrinking to fit into the cracks of his excuses. Lena stood up, steadying herself. She looked at the mirror once more, this time with clarity. The woman staring back was battered but resilient, the kind of strength that only comes from facing the darkness and choosing to walk away. In the quiet, she whispered aloud, "I am enough." She knew the road ahead wouldn't be easy. There would be nights filled with doubt, moments when her resolve would waver. But tonight, she was no longer the woman who romanticized silence or settled for crumbs of affection. Tonight, she reclaimed her voice. And as she turned off the lights, the shadows receded, not because they were gone, but because she had decided to step into the light she deserved. Lena didn't leave with anger. She left with tears, but also with a quiet strength that no one could take from her again. Because she finally knew, she was not hard to love. She was just loving the wrong person for too long. And that is why she quit waiting for him. Maybe I will not forget him and I will not be able to love someone for a while, but I can love myself. One thing is certain. I will not regret my choice. I deserve better.